Hey everybody, welcome to She's Smart. I'm your host, Maria Robotham. On today's episode, I have the incredible Elaine Frontain Bryant. Elaine is the Executive Vice President and Head of Programming at A&E, Lifetime, and the Lifetime Movie Network. With a career full of Emmy-winning hits and groundbreaking shows, she's the powerhouse behind series like Leah Remini's Scientology and the Aftermath, Duck Dynasty, and the number one cable show right now, Gypsy Rose: Life After Lockup. Elaine is reshaping the TV landscape, blending bold storytelling with cultural impact. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. So get cozy as we connect, learn, and laugh together on She's Smart.
Yeah, because I want to be able to sit back. So
That's your cozy.
Yeah, I feel cozy.
I'm so glad you're here. I have to tell you, when we had dinner with your husband and my husband and our mutual friend Dawn,
yes.
After talking to you at that dinner, you were in my list immediately.
That means so much to me.
I
Thank you.
hadn't even put the podcast out there. It wasn't happening yet. I knew I wanted it to happen. And I was like, all right, Elaine's on my list. She's on it.
Well, I have to say, I've been listening to your podcasts, and they're wonderful. And I'm very touched and honored to be part of this list, really.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I am.
I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. I really enjoyed getting to know you through my research and what you do. I'm fascinated. I have notes. You have had an extraordinary career in television. What inspired you to go into television?
I have such formative memories. I'm the baby of a big family of 6 kids, but most of them were off at school, and I have such memories of sitting and watching television with my parents and seeing how much TV meant to them. We all came together naturally. The TV was a very different situation in that moment. It was like you watched it when it was on. But Charlie's Angels and Love Boat and Mork and Mindy and all of those fun 70s shows really brought my parents together. And I was really, really moved by that. And movies, too. I didn't know if I wanted to do movies or TV, but my mom loved movies. And I have such memories of just being there. Our Christmas tradition was after all the presents and stuff. It was like, what movie we're going to do. We rolled out the newspaper, and we saw the times, and we all went to a movie together as a family on Christmas afternoon.
That is so funny. That's so parallel. That's what we did.
Yeah.
We would go see a movie. In California, where I grew up in San Francisco, we had the Chronicle, and they had the pink pages.
Yeah.
And I can see them still to this day. And then the TV Guide, how we knew what shows were on. That was the only way knew.
But I looked at that stuff, and I went, I want to get people to come together to watch things. And so I got into entertainment for that reason.
So did you go to school for that, or did you
I did. I have a radio, TV, film degree. I went to school in Texas, where I'm from, TCU. But I didn't go to a big film school or anything like that. We made our own films. We made our own projects. We learned things like scheduling. If you were going to schedule CBS, what would you do? And, back then it was like, you moved magnets. You would write a name on a show on a magnet and move it around the way they did. It wasn't computer programming. It wasn't anything like that. And it was really fun. I love that. The strategy of programming I have always been attracted to.
What's going to fit where and how is it going to work?
Right. We call it audience need state. That's a very research kind of term, but why someone would come to this show who might then want to stay for this show, who this will speak to them in this show. If you like that, it's a very like Amazon, kind of
it was the original
premise. Yeah, it's the original, but that's it. It's like, wow, this flows into this flows into that, and it makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm not a scheduler, but I'm a curator, and that's what I do. I'm not a maker. I'm not the producer that goes off and makes. I work closely enough with them to do that. It really satisfies my creative side of things and just really satisfies what I wanted to do when I was a little girl, honestly.
Yeah. What was your first job out of school?
I moved to California and I was in the mailroom. But the summer before I was graduating college, so between my junior and senior year of college, I went and I stayed with my sister's best friend in California, and she was producing commercials, and she set me up with somebody that she knew that she was not working with, and I didn't have a car, so I borrowed another sister's car, which was a stick shift, which I did not know how to drive. And by the way, there's no GPS, and so it's like the Thomas Brothers guide or the Maps Go guides, and they would send me out for the simplest task, to go pick something up, and it would take me hours.
Yeah.
And it was in the hilliest part of LA that they put me in. It was like I might as well have been in San Francisco. And I stalled that car, and I'm sure I ruined my sister's car. Eventually, at some point, my dad had mercy on me and said, give your sister her car back, and I'll rent you a car for this thing. So I worked that summer. And it was kind of scary and daunting for all those reasons. But I jumped into it, but I didn't know how to drive a car. I didn't have a car. I didn't know how to drive a car. I didn't know LA. And I loved it. And yet I was scared. And so when I graduated, I had been interning in Dallas. I went to school in Fort Worth, which is right next to Dallas. And they hired me where I had been interning as a senior. And it was a podunk little company selling, if you can imagine, a syndicated show where people used to, you'd call up and go, hi, I have this kid show, Channel 13 in Boston. And then I'd mail them a tape, because that's what we did back then. And then we saw if we sold the show, and they picked up the show. That was never going to be what I wanted to do forever. And my dad called me that first summer saying, what are you doing? Go back out there. You can always come home. I know you're scared. And he drove out with me, and I got a mailroom job for $300 a week. And it was in LA. And yes. And it was on this lot called CBS MTM Studios. They had filmed Gilligan's Island there. But in the moment I was there, they were doing a show called 30-something.
I loved that show.
I loved 30-something so much. And what I did was I drove a golf cart around, and I delivered mail, and I flirted with Ken Olin and Timothy Busfield as much as I could, trying to get in to meet Ed Zwick and Marshall Herskovitz, because I thought that show was so amazing. It was only on for 4 years, but I worked in the mailroom there, and they were doing some Disney sitcoms. Then they were doing the Cosby Show there. It was a really fun place to be, and I eventually got hired. I was only there a couple of months. Reading people's mail, that sounds illegal, but I was putting documents that weren't wrapped up in envelopes and reading everything that I could and learning and absorbing. There are things that people put in mail slots at a studio that are legal documents, but it'll be like a call sheet. What time should the actors arrive the next day? Mm-hmm. What scenes they were going to shoot? And then something called a production report, which was the legal document of what they actually got done the day before, And so they would describe the scenes. And so, I was in the know of what they were going to be shooting on 30-something, which was very fun for me. I absorbed and learned, and then I became an assistant for a TV show, and then I moved over to Disney to work for the production executive that oversaw that TV show. Those were fun days. They were shooting a show called Home Improvement.
I remember that show.
And we would go to the tapings every Friday night, and it was just so wonderful to see it made.
Yeah.
And know that then it would be in somebody's home. And
Tim Allen.
It was Tim Allen.
I loved Home Improvement. You were in such a great moment for television. Mm-hmm. You got to see so many great shows come up.
I did.
So is there a project you developed from the beginning where you said, all right, this hits. This is going to be a good one, before it even premiered, and then it went out and you nailed it?
Yeah. I don't want to sound braggadocious in any way, but there have been a couple of biggies that I just kind of knew. And I feel very proud of a show called Duck Dynasty. So Duck Dynasty came in as a hunting tape. The women weren't even in the tape. The mother, Miss K, holds up one duck that she's going to cook that they caught. It could have been a History Channel show. It could have been a Nat Geo show. I even called my colleagues when it came in at History Channel, and I was like, don't you want to do this show? Because they were funny, and they were hunters, right? And I was working at A&E at the time. I was the senior vice president, and we're a dual audience. So I didn't see the way the show was when it came in as a tape as anything that could work for both audiences, for that women would have any interest, right? Okay. So I called my colleagues at History Channel, we're a sister-brother network, and they're like, no, they had just launched Swamp People. And they're like, no, we're hunting alligators, not ducks. Ducks are a little small. So I dug in with the production company, and I found out that the wives were beautiful, that they were all in the business, that they all got together for dinners and things, that they had wonderful children. And I morphed it into a sitcom, and they were funny. They were made for TV. They were ready. There's no training on my part of the Robertsons, I kind of helped craft what the dinner scene at the end was inspired by the Waltons. That was like the morality moment. I am totally aging myself talking about Mork and Mindy and the Waltons. It was a wonderful thing. And through there, we did 2 pilots of that show because it was like guns. Are guns okay? They shoot a lot of guns. They look different. And my senior management was not sure. And I was like, please give me a chance. Please give me a chance. And when it came in, I was like, holy moly. Not only one was hysterical, but the second one was hysterical. And it was great. And the first season wasn't a super hit off the bat, but it grew and grew and grew. And then it's really one of the biggest shows ever in cable television. I'm really, really very proud of it.
So I watched that show with Ben, my husband.
Thank you.
And loved it. And I think I told you this story when I was pregnant with my first, Easton. We were living in the city. And I went to the hospital and they told me I wasn't ready, so I had to go back home. And while I was laboring, I watched Duck Dynasty.
Thank you.
The entire time.
Did you laugh?
I laughed. I loved them. And I always wondered, and I'm so glad you answered this question because it's literally on my sheet, if the dinner at the very end, I loved how they had disagreements and they had business stuff going on and family stuff going on. But at the end of the night, the end of the week, they sat together, they broke bread together, they said thanks, they had grace, and that was my favorite moment of the show at the end. That was something they always did, or was it kind of like brought in a little bit more?
They did it, but we turned it into the kind of summing up the lessons of the week, right? So they are a very close family. They are together all the time. I'm still in touch with Corey and Willie, and now they're the grandparents. And that's super exciting. And they do that. And they almost do it more like a potluck now because there are so many of them, right? The crafting for the show really was just like what Willie's voiceover would be as he went around the table and what people learned and that kind of thing. That was the crafting of it. Yeah. But they organically did that. They do tend to come together.
It was so wholesome.
I know.
And it resonated. It really hit, as the kids like to say. It really did.
I agree with you. And I think one of the really interesting things, and, as a programmer, you don't have to like everything that you program, right? You just have to have a gut why it's good television, why it's going to entertain someone, and that people will see themselves in some of these characters. And that, I think, is, you wouldn't think that there'd be like a hairy guy, but like that was a sitcom that was the father was made fun of at all times. That was a Dick Van Dyke kind of trope. I developed Storage Wars 2 from the get-go, and that was I don't know if you ever watched that show.
I did.
But that show is very different, right? But that show came to us and it was like a real world Price is Right. And it was a time where Pawn Stars was big and American Pickers was big. Again, the History Channel wasn't going to make Storage Wars, and I was like, why not? You couldn't predict what was going to be in the lockers. Like, I'm sure a lot of people think we stuffed the lockers. We did not stuff the lockers. So they couldn't know that there could be historical things. They didn't know. But we saw that as The Price is Right. And that production company did such an amazing job. Like, every character, I'm air quoting, every character has their own theme song. They were coming to the OK Corral. We crafted that. And I learned so much by working in the edit bay with the showrunner named Jeff Conroy, who created that show, when the act break should be. Like, we timed it. It was 3 acts, and so, like, the locker, the thing would go up, and nobody would see what it was, and then they'd have to come back. Because I program for TV that still has commercials.
Yeah.
And not everybody watches TV that way anymore. But I still have to program like that. And my makers, my creators, have to still pull people through those moments of, please don't go. It used to be everybody left, went to the refrigerator, got a Diet Coke and some snacks, came back, or a beer, and sat, and now you just can't count on that because there's so much, I'll watch it later, I'll watch it on demand, I'll do whatever. But we still program for what the linear situation is, and that's part of the challenge of doing what I do in this moment.
Yeah, because it's changed so much.
Yeah.
So I loved the part of Storage Wars when you would watch and you were wondering which box.
I know.
They're thinking about it, they're talking about it, you don't know. Then they grab, like, the ugliest box. You're like, it's going to be all papers that's rotten. And there's, like, a treasure inside. It was fascinating.
It was fun.
It was such a fun show. Was there a show that you really loved that didn't take off?
Oh, there's been so many. By the way, the ratio of success is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I've done a lot of biggies. I've done Curse of Oak Island and Alone and 60 Days In and stuff. I really like paranormal programming. And so my very first pilot, like 18 years ago, that I got to have made on my own, like brought into the room, I was a baby programmer, was a show called Paranormal Estate. And my friend had, and this is like 18 years ago, and my friend had the rights to this team of paranormal investigators who were students at Penn State. And they really did it. And this guy named Ryan Buell had experiences as a child and always wanted to help people and believed in it. And he had deep Catholic faith and really believed that there is an evil and a good. And so, I mean, I actually have chills talking about it. I was so freaking moved the first taping, the first pilot we ever did with him. It was a little boy who saw somebody like behind him, you know, and it was like, you're so creeped out. Anyway, that show was a big hit for us. And from there, I was really amazed by kids that have ability, that it gets shut down as they do. So I developed a show from my own idea called Psychic Kids. And that did okay for us. But about 10 years later, A&E had gotten out of the paranormal business, right? Like shows run their course. And it wasn't working anymore. And we decided to bring it back. We decided to bring Psychic Kids back. And I thought that it would really hit again because parents love that stuff. They hear it. And it's like, is my kid troubled? Does she need a psychiatrist? Or is she maybe seeing something? It didn't. Nobody watched it again. We also rebooted Ghost Hunters and brought it back to us. It had been on Sci-Fi for a long time. And I was deeply surprised by how rejected those shows were.
That's fascinating. So I believe in all of that.
Yeah.
I believe
Good.
in
We have a lot of stories there.
I've seen them. I know they're around. The house that we're in right now, where we tape, my friend Tyler's house, her house is haunted. And I have been in her house helping her with her closet, getting rid of things in one room. And I walked in and I could feel it. I could feel the presence. And I was like, Tyler, she is here. It's an older woman who lives upstairs, a ghost in her house.
Is it one of the Coleys?
I don't know. Could be. Who knows? We don't know who it is.
Yeah,
we got to
research.
figure it out. We got to research it. Okay, note to self, research that one. And I said, Tyler, she's here. I said, I'm just going to talk to her for a second, and then we'll continue. And I said, ghost, whoever you are, I'm sorry I'm in your space. I will be here for an hour. I won't touch anything but Tyler's clothing, and then I will leave. And it dissipated. That feeling dissipated. 1 hour on the dot. I kid you not. The feeling came back in.
Wow, so you have ability to really feel that energy.
Yeah. And I looked at Tyler and I went, and we're done. She doesn't want me here anymore.
We're done.
I'm not going to piss her off.
She also wants that clothes.
And they're all vintage. We were done in Charleston and we went to Magnolia Plantation. And there was a group of 7 of us and 3 or 4 of the girls where the enslaved barely lived. And they came out of that so messed up.
Yeah.
They're like, the energy was not okay. They were like trembling. It was awful. So I had to call my sister, who is this sense of, I don't even know, world being universe. And she taught us all how to brush the spirits off of us.
Really?
So we're standing in the middle of, I didn't have to do it, but I'm doing it with them. She sent us a video of it. And she's like, okay, guys, here's what you do. And she's going through this series where you brush.
So nobody stays with you and attaches to you and you leave.
And you tell it, like, I'm good, please leave. Like, she had a whole prayer that you do.
So I do a lot of white light, literally top to toes on my own self whenever I'm worried or travel. I do it on my kids. You know, my daughter drives now and goes out at night, and I literally just vision it. I do believe in all of that and protective forces. I have never been as sensitive to detecting spirits, but Genevieve was when she was young and really dismisses it now. Would hate me to even say that if anybody was going to hear that she knew. But she was, she saw things. Or would be like, Mom, did you just call my name? You know, and
she's a gift.
Such a gift. And then it shuts down, even though I asked her not to shut it down. But she definitely, the house, we had a home in Rhinebeck, our upstate weekend home. Her demeanor would change. She would kind of cock her head like this. And I was like, what, we're not alone? And I was like, is it Grandma? Is it Papa? Is it my cousin Patrick? And she's like, no, it's the man. He says it's his house. And we bought a house from an 80-something-year-old man, and it was 10 years later. It makes sense. And I was like, Jim, I have chills, which makes me think it's true. And I was like, Jim, I'm so sorry we fucked up your garden.
Yeah.
You had such a beautiful garden. But she would just go, do you see faces there like I do? And I was like, no, but it's okay. You're not unsafe. And it's a blessing that you see them and just tell them hello. But she is not, now she doesn't. But it was more, she saw less than she heard. She heard a lot.
Oh, I hope that she grows back into it.
Yeah.
I really do. Because you can I tapped into it further. Just allowing it to...
I'm going to send you the pilot from Paranormal State because, again, it's old, but it's fascinating. And, the thing is, that is hard to translate to television sometimes. Yeah. So it's like you can sense authenticity and you can also sense, oh, that's just a music cue and that's just, and did they really move, did that cabinet door really open? That stuff, people have a high BS meter, right? And so telling paranormal authentically, I think, which is what we always try to do. We also brought the emotional into it. Mm-hmm. So ours was about parents trying to help children who were plagued when the world didn't believe that they were plagued by whatever they were seeing or feeling. Or it was almost like we do a show called Intervention. It was almost like an intervention type thing. We healed these people by coming and doing this investigation. It wasn't Ghost Hunters didn't go as emotionally, deep that way. Yeah. But that stuff, I was sad that it didn't work coming back. But, there's always a time and a place, and who knows, in a couple of years.
It could happen
They will
again.
try it again.
It could definitely happen again.
I'll put you on the show.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I will just love to be a part of it and listen to it. So you have these big streaming giants now, like Netflix. And obviously, when we were growing up, because the Waltons, there's a joke in my family that we all go to bed at night and we say, good night, Timmy, good night, Mary,
Exactly.
Good night, Johnny. So I'm with you on that. You've not aged me. I am with you on that. I do the same thing. How has this new streaming part of our life changed for you and how you program and put things out there? Because I binge watched Gypsy Rose, which I want to talk about, but I'll talk about that next, on Hulu. Because I have Hulu and I get all the channels, the cable channels, because we cut cable.
Thank you very much.
Right? I know, right? This is terrible. Hi, programmer for all of Lifetime A&E. I don't have cable. So we watch it through Hulu, and I'm sure there are many others that do that. So how are you navigating that with ad dollars and this and that?
It's hard. That's the hardest challenge. So my job is, first and foremost, get people to come to linear, but to pick shows that people will watch wherever they will watch it. And then there are other people's jobs to make sure that we monetize wherever they see it. And you hope that it's a virtuous circle, that then they will come back, right? Gypsy Rose is an example of a recent Lifetime show that is very, very young. So is Dance Moms, right?
Yeah.
Dance Moms is gangbuster on Hulu, as is, Gypsy, the download to own, where people like go to Apple or whatever and buy it and own it that way. Those young girls are never going to come and you're not even getting cable. So they're not going to come and get cable, but they're going to know it's Lifetime. And as long as we can monetize the content, but it is very hard. It's harder. We used to be in 100 million homes for A&E, and now we're in like 60 million-ish. People are cord cutting. And yet, our business model is that while we do not own our own streamer, it's not like we're Oxygen, but we have Peacock, or Bravo, and we have Peacock. It's not like we don't have that. But we do have a relationship with Hulu because we are half owned by Disney.
Okay.
And we have a great relationship with them, and so they air most of our things. And it's all branded. You know that it's Lifetime, right? We have our own, A&E as its own thing, Lifetime History. Everybody's got their own little placard. And then we monetize on all these fast channels. And so the amazing part of the business model that our founders really did is that we don't just license things. We own the majority, like 99% of our content. And so we can put it wherever we want to do it. And we do monetize it that way.
So what's the difference between a show that's licensed and not licensed?
So license would be like, I rent it. I'm renting it. I don't own it. I'm renting an apartment. I don't buy my house.
Okay. Is there an example of that?
Sometimes we try to do a co-production with, because we like a show with like UK, let's say, and we think it'll work. But we can't use it everywhere because somebody else controls the rights.
Got it.
We don't own the IP, the copyright. We don't. We have it. But for the most part, we fully commission and we own everything. And so we have, participants who are the makers, the producers, get some part of that, right? After we profit around the world. But we have networks around the world where the content goes. But it is hard. It is a challenge. Sometimes it feels, well, viewing habits have changed so much. I'm actually glad that streamers are dropping weekly more and more. A lot of shows I watch, I get pissed off because I'm like, what? I want to watch them all right now. And it's like, ugh, I'm only, it's like one a week. I watch a lot of shows that are just dropping once a week, which I'm glad at least people are doing that, because it's not like you spend all weekend unless you wait. If you do that, you can go to lifetime.com or A&E.com or history and watch all of them anyway. But it is not easy. So we get paid from our affiliates, our deals with the Comcasts and those people, the carriage deals, right? Those people.
Okay.
And then the ad dollars. And as those numbers shrink, we just have had to find revenue elsewhere. And so the end line there is that we own the content. We make content people want to watch. We'll pay for it. We will get paid for it somewhere else,
Yeah. I binge watched the Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Yes. That was when she was in jail.
That was when she was in jail. I can see how it was cable's #1 show.
Yeah.
I could not take my eyes off of it. I had to know what happened. I was fascinated by it. The same thing happened with Leah Remini with the Scientology.
Thank you.
It was like, we all have wanted to know about this.
I
We
know.
all have been so curious about this. Now we get like this little peek into that. Fascinating. How, and there are more, but how do you stay on top of it? Because you have really hit some big ones. How do you find it? Because you really have a knack for it.
Honestly, that's harder. That's harder these days because of the streamers, because they have a lot more money to throw at things. And that is a challenge, I'll be honest. Gypsy Rose, there's a woman that I work with named Laura Fleury who had been working for a long time. She actually was working with another producer named Melissa Moore, who had a relationship with Gypsy for years.
Okay.
Melissa herself, her father was a serial killer. And so she actually has spent her life working with people who have been in and around crime, and specifically parental or familial criminals. And so she reached out with a lot of empathy and understanding that you can imagine to Gypsy and got in with Gypsy. It's only because of my colleague Laura's relationship with this producer that it landed with us. And it's amazing. And then, the thing we chose to believe is that, and there had been very successful movies. People had done docs and movies before without her, okay? Mm-hmm. So we chose to believe that people would really care to see the true story. You think you know the story, but you don't. That's a hallmark. That's something you hear me say like 5 times a day. You think you know the story, but you really don't. The bet that we also took was that they were going to care. The audience was going to care once she was out, right? So now she's out and she's pregnant, and which man is she with? That's a very different, I started the word need, the conversation with the need state thought. That's a very different need state. That's not just a crime thing. She's in jail. Is she going to get out? When's she going to get out? Is she going to get paroled? Now it's like, what does Gypsy's hair look like? And what boy is she going to be with? And people care. Some people hate watch, believe me, but she did her time, but she did kill her mother. And it's really been fascinating to see this, but I love that you think you know that, and then we peel back the layers and really go there. And Leah Remini, same thing. Going Clear had been a very successful doc on HBO, and nobody was brave enough to do the series. Mm-hmm. Scientology is scary. You know what I mean? And they'll come after you. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you the stories on the podcast, but when we're off, I'll tell you some stories. But it's not every advertiser wants to be around it. So it was a high-risk show to go for, but she was so authentic and had such a mission, and Mike Rinder did as well, that we were like, all she's doing is driving around telling stories. That was kind of amazing that many people really stuck with it. And she still, God bless her, she still is. We're working with her right now on something else, but she is still so involved in just helping people and the cause of people getting out or connecting with their family that they've been disconnected from and things like that. She's remarkable. I'm not a crime watcher, but A&E could be described as a crime network. But that doesn't mean I don't know what a good story is, right? Mm-hmm. And people love crime. They love it. They love it.
All my friends do.
And I definitely, and frankly, these Lifetime movies are hard for me to watch because a lot of them start with a young girl who is abducted or something. And they all make it, right? Like, we don't do the ones where they don't make it. But I'm the mother of 2 young girls, and I choose not to watch that for entertainment myself. But I have to spend a lot of time in there. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I ran History Channel for many years, and I am snake phobic. Like, phobic on a level like can't open a book and if there's a snake. Phobic on a level like if it's on the TV and I don't know it's coming. And a lot of snakes are in pitches when you're doing something like Swamp People. Yes. Now they have a whole show on Swamp People, the snake invasion or serpent invasion. Oh, yeah. If my team would not tell me the time code or if there was a snake in the tape, they have to warn me. First of all, most people know not to put a snake in the tape that they send me, even if it's set in Louisiana, you know?
Wow. So anyone who sends tapes to you that want to produce something,
they know.
Don't put the snake in it.
The team tells them, do not put the snake in it. It's a little easier on A&E, but History, it was really hard. I did a show called Alone that is still on History, but we were like up in British Columbia, and I was like, there's no snakes up there. I love a good Alaska show because there's no snakes.
Bears are fine.
Snakes are fine. Snakes are not. But I literally, I'm like, you could get fired if you don't know. I mean, I have thrown coffee up. Like, it is a problem. So it's funny to be able to know what people will like, even if you can't stand it, you know? And those are just 2 examples of living in crime, knowing that that is satisfying and knowing that you can help make the story as resonant as possible. And a lot of times people learn because these are based on true stories, and it's the cunning and smarts of the women that get themselves out of the situation that is pretty amazing. And the other stuff, people just love survival, and nobody cares about snakes the way I do.
Oh, it's fascinating. Can you share anything that you are currently developing? Dr. Pimple Popper.
Has that been announced?
It has. I read about it. So there is one on here that hasn't been announced, but it is on your site, and I did read about it on the Daily Mail, which is such a great form of, news.
Exactly. You can be sure those sources are correct.
So, Dr. Pimple Popper, I have watched Dr. Pimple Popper.
You have?
Oh, but from YouTube. I am fascinated by the grotesque things like that.
Really?
Yeah, I can't turn away from it. I need to see what comes out. How much of it comes out is so disgusting. I'm sorry, guys. This is me. This is my truth. I think that also there's something about what she's doing to help change people that gets lost in the gore and the science of it. Not even science of it, but how is that living in someone's body?
I know.
But at the end of the day, she's doing it because it's literally helping someone, changing their lives. I can't imagine living with something on your face that's growing I just think it's fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about that series that's going to be happening?
So it's very similar to the other series. First of all, she's maybe the nicest woman I've ever met in my life. And everything you just said really encapsulates why and what. She is so touched by helping people, and that people come from around the world to her because they believe that she's the only one that can help them. And that's the power of television too. She's the daughter of a dermatologist, so she's been in this her whole life, and she is deeply passionate, but it is all about the people. I would say one of the really fun things that we're doing in this is that she has some young female proteges that she's really training, and they're just some great characters, and that is going to be something that you'll see new. It will be very similar. It'll be the same kind of life-changing, one big story and a couple of small stories, but really seeing The Office more and how the proteges work is really how we've kind of made it our own.
Does she teach them the process? Because the skill that has to go into that. You can't do this. I mean, how many times were we told as girls, sorry, and boys, I tell my son now, Easton this, I'm like, sorry, Easton, don't pop it.
Don't pop it. It's like hot compress. Well, now they make those adorable little patches. I've
used those patches every once in a while.
She loves them.
So it's fascinating to see how she's doing it in the scientific and medical way to get it. I mean, these are obviously bigger pieces that are coming off of the person. Okay, can you tell us when that's coming out? Sometime?
Late spring.
Okay, so fun. Every night I read the Daily Mail, which is the best source of news.
Maybe
and I do. I love it.
It's juicy.
Oh, it's so juicy and salacious, and half the time it talks about Florida, where my husband is from. My sister-in-law
He's a Florida man.
He is. My sister-in-law used to be a defense attorney in Florida, and every once in a while she would send me these articles about the craziest ass stories that happen in Florida. She's like, "This is my client."
Oh my God.
And so I...
Wait, could she send them to me for TV?
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, really?
She would be amazing. So I will connect you. And all of a sudden pops up a story about Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Right.
And I'm reading, I'm like, oh, wait, Lifetime, wait, this is great. And then you are quoted, and I guess she wrote a book about her mom. Her mom had passed, and the movie is called...
The Holiday Junkie.
A Holiday Junkie, and it premieres on December 14th.
She's adorable. She wrote this. She directed this. She owns the whole thing. She's almost in every scene with her husband.
Oh, that's her husband.
And it's her husband is in it with her, and they have adorable chemistry. And it's really interesting. Most holiday movies don't go into dealing with grief in the holiday, right? It's all romance and love, and you get that from this, and you get all the beauty of all the adorable Christmas stuff. She's a holiday decorator that comes in and meets, I think he's the handyman, and very good and sexy. And they get together, and that's her husband. But she is missing her mother, and it was her mother's business, and she brought that authenticity in. And so there's some real scenes that really go there. And you hear that all the time. You get fed it on Instagram or people who post it. Like, people are missing people on the holidays, and the holidays bring that out. And so to bring that into a Christmas movie, we thought was really great, especially was so authentic to Jennifer. She's been such a great partner for us over the years. She's wonderful. And to see her step into this creative role was really wonderful to see.
I'm a huge holiday movie fan.
Yes.
I watch every one of them. This, I think, will really hit home to so many people. I love the fluff, and we're in Scotland, and we're meeting the man who chops down trees. It's fantastic. Yeah. But there is this amount that if you've lost someone, it could be whether it's a parent or a spouse or a child. It
adds another layer of depth. It really does.
So when you're actually looking at the month of January for programming, how do you set that all up? How do you know what goes where and everything else?
Well, other people smarter than me help me do that. So I don't pick the night, even though we started this conversation where that was like one of my favorite classes when I was in college. We know when things will be ready.
Okay.
We aggregate things. For instance, in January for A&E, we have a bunch of new series coming, and January is a lot of people watch TV in January. It's dark, it's cold, the holidays are over, they're not going to parties. It's called the high hut level time. Houses using television. Old school. So you try to get a lot of good premieres on in January. As a matter of fact, January 1, people like a lot of stuff, and they just watch in a lot of January into February. Not as much sports, certainly football playoffs, but the fall is just awful to try to program around between the election and the news and all the sports that are happening in the fall. It's really hard. You just go, wow, what a gangbuster week if we do this on a Wednesday and that feeds into a Thursday, and we have 2 new premieres on a Thursday, and then that feeds into our Friday. So you just kind of plan. You see what's ready in there and what are similar need states, what are similar programs. We have a marketing saying, but it's true, bring them and keep them. And so we do promote to the next show, right? And A&E and Lifetime and History, we don't really have the financial ability to buy a lot of off-air programming, promos. You're not going to see a Super Bowl ad probably for any of our brands. We can't spend that money. So our best thing is our sites and apps. Hulu diverts people back, and our own air. That is still the smartest. So it's like when you come in, if you're going to come in and check in when Gypsy Rose is coming back, which is in March, by the way.
Oh, good.
So, when you do that, then I want to feed you the next thing. And then I want to feed you the next thing that you're going to like. And it's that whole premise.
Yeah. I think after Gypsy Rose, they had Storage Wars popping up on Hulu.
They could have, on Hulu.
Like when you're done with the series and they go, try this series
try
next.
This one.
That's the one
curious.
that popped up next.
Huh.
You said this before. I like that the series are coming out week by week now.
Yeah.
It's when we were kids and you're waiting for the next episode to come out and you don't know what's going to happen until you watch next week. But we're in such a fast-paced world.
Yeah.
Our kids are inundated with these fast things.
All right now.
I like the slow. I like the let's wait for it. There's that gratification that comes in later, right? And I like that.
I think so too. And when you find a show that you love and somebody else loves, you can get lost for 20 minutes talking about it with somebody. I've heard you talk about it with your other guests. It's like you could talk about the royal family if that's an interest that you have. Anytime you find a shared interest. But I think movies, TV do that. And it's so subjective because I don't really Bravo Housewives programming. but I know some of the characters, and I'd be interested why. And, everybody just has an opinion. But when you have a shared experience with someone, I think it's huge. And when it's a ginormous shared experience where so many people are talking about it in the world, that I feel deeply honored that people invite us into their homes. And it really, I pinch even on bad days, frankly, you're reminding me, because it is hard right now. Mm-hmm. So to end on a positive note, to think of the little girl that I was and how touched I was by the people that made the shows, that spoke to me and my mom and my dad, to be part of that in any way, to think that people are inviting us into their homes, I'm very honored. I really am.
Yeah. And you're kicking ass. You are so kick-ass. Guys, 2 pages of bio. And all of it is... I don't know if I might have a 3-minute intro for you on this. So I ask every guest the same 3 questions.
Okay.
What is something you've changed your mind about recently?
Not very intellectual, but banana bread. Never liked banana bread, and now my daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, just made it with chocolate chips in it, and I'm like, I'm all in.
Have you never had it with chocolate chips?
No, I never have.
It's the only way I make banana bread.
Well, here, so you could have changed my mind a long time ago.
Now, with baking time, I'm going to bake you a loaf with chocolate chips. That's amazing. What is the most random thing on your bucket list?
This is a funny one. My sister's done it. I want to stay at an ice hotel.
Yes.
Have you heard of that?
Yes.
So there's one in Quebec that's beautiful. Old Quebec is remarkable. It's only open like a couple of months of the year. Cold as hell. But you go in, they give you these cool little things. It's not like you're going to have sexy time with your husband, probably.
You're freezing your ass off.
You're freezing your ass off. But you go and they give you a room like next door at the hotel too. And I'm like, how cool is that? And we did dog sledding recently, but I would do that again because the dogs are so amazing and it's so quiet and you're in the pristine country. So I kind of want to do an ice hotel.
Where did you go dog sledding?
We were in Canada called Mont Tremblant.
Yes. I have never been, but
it's wonderful.
Another friend went up there last year, her and her husband, and they loved it so much they're trying to plan a trip so the kids can come.
We brought the kids.
Yeah.
It was really cold. I was with a friend who didn't ski and was at the spa with me at the same time.
And sounds awesome.
Chris took the kids with the other dad, and it was like, yeah, we'll see you back here. We'll have the wine ready.
Did you fly up or drive?
We flew to Montreal, and it's about 2 hours from Montreal.
And drive from there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on my bucket
beautiful.
list.
It's an adorable village town. And you can dog mush. You can do a ton of stuff there, but they don't have an ice hotel. It's like silent in the woods. And there's like icicles on the trees. I mean, it was cold, but they wrap you up. It was a beautiful experience.
Magic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on my bucket list. I want to do that. The last question is, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I would say slow down. All these dates and expectations of by the time I'm 30, I must do this, don't matter. I had to make a movie by the time I was 30. I did. I produced a feature film by the time I was 30. Had to have my children by a certain age. That didn't happen. Life changed, and it's all fine. And I don't even remember the why that I had to. And so I would give myself a little grace to just enjoy the ride a little more and know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's what I tell my daughter now, going through things. It's so easy to say to someone else. Yeah. But it's
she's a senior. Right?
Yes,
right?
She got her first good safety. And so now we can kind of breathe while we're waiting for like the biggies.
Oh, congrats.
But that was, I'm telling myself the same thing. It's like, it's all going to be okay. Wherever you go is going to be fine. But hard to hear that when she's like me. She has a plan for her life and she knows what she's going to be. And this is part of it. And you want that ambition.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah. But the timing doesn't have to be it. I didn't think I'd launch a podcast at 45.
That's right.
And I was a stylist for 15 years.
Yeah.
I made that happen. I did that. I knew 45 was going to be a good year. There was something in my bones. When I turned 40, I was like, no, this isn't it. This isn't it for me. 45 is going to be it. And all of a sudden, it became it.
Look at you.
Without even realizing it. But I knew it. And I'm like, oh, I'm just getting started. Like, who knows what's next?
We are so thankful.
Knows?
We are so thankful that you're just getting started.
Getting started.
Thank you for having me on this.
Oh, God, I'm so glad you were here. And I'm glad the studio wasn't cold. I usually leave it like Letterman, and it's freezing in here.
Really? Well, you are very warm, so you would have warmed me.
I get heated up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me today on She's Smart. You can find a new episode every Thursday. Bye.